Night presses its weight onto the Hürtgen Forest, a cold, living thing that exhales fog through the trees. Private Daniel Mercer lies on his stomach in the mud, cheek numb against the frozen earth. His breath rises in thin ghost-white ribbons. Somewhere behind him, someone whispers a prayer that dissolves into the wind. Ahead, the forest glows with faint orange pulses, German machine gun nests adjusting, waiting. Their barrels sweep the dark like patient predators. Dan's heartbeat is louder than the war. He tastes metal. His fingers tremble around the rifle's icy stock. A mortar thumps. The ground vibrates under him before the explosion tears open the night. Branches snap. Snow drifts down like ash. Silence returns, thick, unnatural. Sergeant Hale, crouched beside a fallen log, leans close enough that Dan can feel the cold on his breath. "They always hear us first," Hale murmurs. "Always." Dan knows. The Germans belong to this forest. They move like they grew from the roots. The Americans feel like intruders, loud even when silent. A faint click echoes through the trees, metal meeting metal. A safety being switched off. "Machine gun. 2 o'clock, Hale whispers. Dan braces. A rifle cracks. Bark explodes above his helmet. Someone behind him gasps, barely a sound, but enough. German voices shout, sharp and confident. Machine guns open up, shredding the dark. The air fills with splinters, fire, and the tearing scream of the MG-42, a sound, like the world itself being ripped apart. Dan sinks deeper into the mud, eyes burning. A single terrified thought rises. How do you fight men who never seem afraid? He remembers a line from his diary. They fight like the world is ending. Tonight, he finally understands. Dawn never truly arrives in the Hürtgen. Light simply bleeds slowly into the fog, turning shadows into paler shadows. When the order to pull back comes, the men rise stiffly from the earth, bodies aching as if carved from the same frozen mud they slept in. Dan walks with the others along a narrow trail, boots crunching frost. No one speaks. Their breath forms, brief clouds that vanish instantly, like thoughts they're too tired to hold. Every sound feels amplified. The crack of a distant branch, the muted thud of artillery far away, the soft rattle of equipment against their trembling bodies. Behind them, the forest absorbs everything. They follow a winding trench system left by another unit, half collapsed, lined with splintered logs. Dan runs his hand along one. The wood is rough and scarred with shrapnel. They fought hard here, Hale mutters. Dan imagines boys he'll never meet crouching in this same trench, clutching their rifles, praying the Germans would tire. But Germans don't tire, not here. Not in this terrain that shields them like a second skin. As they march, Dan remembers a rumor whispered the night before. The Germans train in forests like these from childhood. Every one of them knows how to disappear. They shoot like they're born with rifles in their hands. He hadn't believed it. Now he does. The fog thickens until the world shrinks to a few feet. A column of American medics appears suddenly, pushing carts loaded with blankets and bodies. Some bodies move, some don't. A medic's voice cracks as he passes. They're hitting us like they don't care if they die. Dan lowers his head, boots sinking deeper into the sludge. The journey is not just distance. It is the slow realization of what they're truly fighting. By midday, the forest thins, and the men reach a makeshift command post, nothing more than a cluster of tents pressed against the slope of a muddy hill. Smoke drifts from a small potbelly stove, smelling faintly of burnt coffee and damp wool. After hours in the freezing woods, the air feels almost warm. Dan steps inside the supply tent and stops. The shelves are full, cans of stew stacked neatly in rows, boxes of ammunition arranged with geometric precision, rolls of bandages, clean and white, even soap, thick ivory bars wrapped in crisp paper. He stares, stunned. The sight is almost offensive in its abundance. A corporal sorting boxes glances at him. "First time seeing real supplies?" he asks, half smiling. Dan nods, swallowing hard. "Feels strange?" "Yeah," the corporal replies. "Wait until you see what the Germans captured from us last month. Said they couldn't believe how much we carry." Dan lifts a bar of soap. It's heavier than he expects, smooth and faintly perfumed. He closes his eyes. For a moment, the scent mixes with a memory. His mother washing laundry on a summer porch. The world uncomplicated. A sudden ache tightens his throat. He pockets the soap quietly. Outside, Hale is speaking to a lieutenant, voice low. "They fight like they're starving. Like every bullet is their last." The lieutenant nods grimly. "For some of them it is." Dan listens, absorbing every word. He thinks of the forest, the relentless machine guns, the precision of the rifle fire. Men fighting with the desperation of those who have nothing left. When he steps back into the cold, the shock settles deeper than he expects. The first real contrast has hit him. America fights with resources. Germany fights with resolve. And resolve is harder to kill. Night settles slowly, draining the color from the camp until everything becomes a muted wash of gray and blue. Dan sits beside the stove, boots drying near the open iron door. The heat bites his skin in sharp needles. But he welcomes the pain. It proves he's still alive. Hale hands him a tin cup of stew. Steam rises in gentle spirals, thick with the smell of beef and potatoes. Dan lifts it to his lips and hesitates. It's hot. It's rich. It feels wrong. He forces down a spoonful anyway. The warmth spreads through his empty stomach like a confession. Around him, the men eat quietly, eyes lowered, almost ashamed. They all know their enemy isn't eating like this. German rations are little more than black bread, thin soup, dried turnips. Some soldiers have been found carrying handfuls of raw oats in their pockets. Food for horses, not men. A medic at the next table whispers, "Saw a captured German today. Skin on his ribs like paper. Still fought harder than any of us." Dan says nothing. He keeps eating. Later, he steps outside. Fog blankets the landscape in a soft, muffled silence. A few tents away, someone reads a letter aloud to calm his nerves. The words drift through the air, talk of harvests, warm kitchens, new babies. Dan pictures the ruined German towns they passed earlier. Roofs caved in, windows blown out, whole streets starved of color. A country crumbling under its own war. And yet, their soldiers fight with the fury of men protecting something sacred. He rubs the bar of soap in his pocket, feeling its smoothness. This small, ordinary object feels like a symbol of comfort, of distance, of two very different worlds colliding on the same battlefield. A quiet realization settles over him. The hardest enemy to fight is the one who believes he has nothing left to lose. Rain begins just after midnight, thin at first, then steady, drumming softly on canvas like distant footsteps. Dan lies awake in his cot, staring at the tent ceiling. Sleep drifts near but never settles. His mind keeps circling the same memories, the relentless German gunfire, the hunger in captured eyes, the strange calm in their voices. Hale turns in the cot beside him. "Can't sleep." "No," Dan whispers. "Me neither." The rain fills the silence between them. Dan pulls out his pocket diary and flips to a blank page. His handwriting trembles as he begins. "They fight like ghosts. We fight like visitors." He pauses, listening to the rain's rhythm. "What I can't understand is how they keep going when everything around them is falling apart." A sudden burst of laughter cuts through the night. American soldiers in a nearby tent playing cards by lantern light. The sound is warm, careless, alive. Dan closes his eyes. Hours later, at dawn, a captured German corporal is brought into camp. Thin, rain-soaked, eyes sunken but unbroken. He walks with a limp yet holds his chin high. A medic offers him a blanket. He refuses at first, then accepts with stiff, conflicted dignity. Dan watches from a distance as Hale mutters, "Look at him. Barely standing. And he still looks at us like he's not afraid." It's true. The man's gaze is steady, almost defiant. Not hatred, but a certainty born from years of indoctrination, hardship, and belief in something crumbling yet still sacred. Dan feels a knot tighten inside. He realizes what's been haunting him. Kindness can be a weapon too. It strips away the simple story of enemy, replacing it with a human face. Tired, wounded, unbreakable. For the first time, Dan understands. The real battle isn't in the forest. It's inside their own hearts. The clouds part on the third morning, letting a rare beam of pale winter sunlight spill across the camp. It catches on helmets, tin cups, damp uniforms, turning everything briefly gold. Dan stands outside his tent, breathing in air that tastes sharper, cleaner, almost hopeful. Orders arrive shortly after breakfast. They're moving out again, back toward the forest, back into the frozen maze where the Germans wait. The announcement ripples through the camp in a low murmur. No cheering, no groans. Just quiet acceptance. The kind born from too many battles and too little sleep. Dan tightens the straps on his pack. The bar of soap rests in his pocket, warm from his body heat. Strange how such a small thing has become a symbol of home, of comfort, of the gulf between these armies. Hale walks beside him as the men form into a loose column. His voice is low. "You scared?" Dan nods. "You?" Hale exhales, watching the breath curl upward. I think everyone is. We just get good at hiding it. They start toward the tree line. The forest looms ahead, dark, tangled, whispering. The same place where everything feels tilted. Where the Germans move like shadows, and the Americans move like intruders. Dan feels the old fear returning, coiling in his gut. But something else rises with it, a strange clarity. He thinks of the captured German corporal in his steady eyes. He thinks of the medics, the ration lines, the ruins they'd walked through. He thinks of the machine guns that never seemed to run out of fury. And he understands something final. The hardest enemies to fight are the ones shaped by hardship, the ones forged in scarcity, the ones who believe the world has already ended and fight to claim whatever pieces remain. The forest swallows the column. Dan breathes once, steady, and steps inside.